Hey world, what up? We're around 4 to 5 weeks in the NBA season here for 2021, and essentially we already can kind of tell who's going to make the playoffs, who's going to be in that mix, and who's pretty much improved upon these teams. So if we're looking to the Western Conference as of right now, there have been a few surprising teams that have been on the downtrend, let alone who's been surprising us in a good trend. So in a good trend is the Utah Jazz. Maybe there was that small percentage out there that had the Jazz pretty much as a top three, top four seed. On my side of things, I thought they would have been in the bottom of the playoff seedings, let alone maybe could have missed it. So big kudos to the Utah Jazz. Round of applause to them real quick. Teams that have been kind of struggling that we didn't really see it to be in the beginning of the season were the Dallas Mavericks. I still expect them to make the NBA playoffs in the long run, but it's not a really good look for them. The Houston Rockets, the James Harden trade, mega trade finally went down with, so the Rockets are going to be out of that picture. And the New Orleans Pelicans are also a team that were a disappointment as of right now with the Stan Van Gundy experiment at a 5-10 record as of right now. So who knows? Maybe they'll put the plug on Stan Van Gundy a little early. Who knows what direction they could possibly go? Maybe you want to bring in Kenny Atkinson as a coach. And then in the Eastern Conference, we've seen some teams same in that same mix. So, for example, the Indiana Pacers have been, earlier this season, they were a second seed, a second or third. They were pretty surprising, but now they've been kind of, coming back to earth. The Philadelphia 76ers have been a surprising team as they're a number one seed record in the Eastern Conference. Kudos to Joel Embiid, who's having an MVP-type season. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks get the nod for, most improved and surprising teams in the East. Now, they do both have losing records because the Eastern Conference is not deep as it is. But still, this is a good start for them. I like the identity for the Cavaliers and Knicks. They finally have an identity. And the Cavaliers do have bigs, and you have Colin Sexton, who's been really, performing himself to try to go for an all-star level type basis. And with the New York Knicks bringing in Tom Thibodeau, even though he has around an 8 to 9 man lineup, he plays these cats around 40 minutes a night, but they're gritty, they're young, they're explosive, and they finally have some structure. So kudos to the Knicks. Kudos to them. And surprising teams in the East that have been on the downtrend are the Toronto Raptors at a 7-10 record, the Miami Heat who are 6-10, and then the Wizards who are 3-9. Not good looks in them. So let's jump into here on the jump. And Rachel Nichols and the crew, they're going to go more deeper into the teams that potentially are on a trend to miss the postseason.
Which is really interesting. Recent history shows a majority of the playoff teams are likely set. Take a look at last year's standings 4 weeks in. 13 of the 16 teams in playoff positioning ended up, in fact, making the postseason. In fact, 9 of the last 10 seasons, either 6 or 7 teams from each conference that were in the playoffs at the 4-week mark stayed in the top 8. So as we start with the East standings today, where the last 2 East champs, the Heat and the Raptors, are within a game of the Knicks, Cavs, and Hawks. Richard, who is the one team most at risk in the East of falling out of the playoffs? Because I know it's early, but history shows only one of these teams is likely to fall out.
Yeah, if we're going on the top 8, the most likely teams to fall out are actually going to be 2 teams, the Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. Now, if I had to pick one team, as Rachel's been stating, the New York Knicks would miss the playoffs. The Cavaliers do have more of a foundation. They do have more experience and all-star type players on their team, such as Colin Sexton and Andre Drummond. And besides the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm really liking the position they've had themselves after beating the Brooklyn Nets back-to-back nights. That's a huge confidence booster for this team, knowing that they can make the playoffs. So the Cavaliers are going to be in a position to where they either squeak in around a 7th through a 9th seed or be on the outside. Who knows about it? But the New York Knicks, that's not going to last. With Tom Thibodeau playing an 8 to 9 man rotation lineup, 40 minutes a night, that's not going to be able to keep the trend for the whole season. They got around 60 games left. They're not going to keep it consistent like that, but they'll still be respectable as it is.
Oh, that's tough. I'm going to have to say, ooh, God, it's going to hurt, but the Cavs. The Cavs and the Hawks are the 2 teams. I think.
You think both of them are
Wow.
not going to?
I don't think both of them won't make it.
Wow.
I just look. That's tough because the Heat. How are we going to say the Heat aren't going to make it?
Well, that's what. So
they got so much talent.
The point is that if you put the Heat or Raptors, traditional powerhouses of the past few years, in,
and the reason why I'll say this is because of this. When you look at last year's team, the Suns started off super, super hot, and then they slowly trickled down.
Yes.
Timberwolves started off super, super hot, and then trickled down. So even though that month chart had them in there, where they were 2 weeks before was even higher, and they just kept going.
And that's why I stated the New York Knicks will not be in that position. I mean, listen, the Knicks, they've had a nice start. You usually see that with these young teams. They usually go around 90% the beginning of the season. They don't pace themselves. Same thing with the last season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Some of these young teams as well. So I'm not buying into the New York Knicks in the long run. Not at all. But kudos to them. Give the respect. The Cleveland Cavaliers are kind of that bubble team because they do have the right pieces, the right experience to where they can sneak in. But really, that really depends on the Toronto Raptors and the Miami Heat for me. Because it looks like the Washington Wizards are not going to catch up back to a playoff position. Who knows mid-season if they're going to look to trade Russ or blow that whole experiment up. I'm going to focus more on the Raptors and the Heat because they were the second and the 4th seed last season. You know, they were pretty much around the top 6 to 7 teams left in the NBA, and the Miami Heat were in the finals. Now with the Miami Heat, since they were in the finals, they didn't get much time of rest. So the Heat are in a bad position as of right now. Pat Riley's probably scratching his head about not making that James Harden trade. Who knows if that was the case or not, but I'll be shocked if the Raptors and Heat do not make the playoffs. I'd be shocked.
Going down. So that's why it's like I look at those teams, and those teams started off well, and now they're slowly trickling down.
So you would say both the
Cavs, yeah. I'm sorry, Cavs fans. I love you guys to death, but I think it's going to be
about
tough.
the Hawks. What about you?
And the fact that the RJ didn't even mention the Knicks to miss it, that says something. I don't know.
I'm going with the Cleveland Cavaliers also. I just think,
So you both think the Knicks are staying in?
I think Coach Thibodeau is going to do wonders for that ball club. He's changed the culture. They're playing defense now.
Yeah.
Hey, again, kudos to them, but no, the New York Knicks will not make the NBA playoffs. No, sir. No, sir. I'm shocked that they would put the Knicks over the Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. No.
I believe that the Knicks will make it, but Atlanta and Cleveland, they're two of the worst defensive teams in the league, and that's not a recipe for making the playoffs. No. And I think Miami Heat, who will be one of the better defensive teams, are going to get in.
Well, and again, look at the Cavs, even the makeup of their team. Like, I love their young talent, love their backcourt. Yeah. You know, they got Jared Allen, they got Drummond, they got JaVale McGee. So it's like, even then, they kind of have a little bit less of a traditional team, and you're going to depend on a very young backcourt, not having Porter Jr.
And in no order, my expectations of who will make the NBA playoffs, as of right today, kind of knowing the trend, the 76ers will be in the playoffs. The Boston Celtics will. The Milwaukee Bucks will. The Indiana Pacers. The Brooklyn Nets. The Atlanta Hawks. And then there's 2 open positions as of right now. With the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors, I'm still going to put the Toronto Raptors going into the playoffs. And I fully expect the Miami Heat to bounce back and make the playoffs. I don't think the New York Knicks, well, for sure the Knicks are making the playoffs. The Cleveland Cavaliers could be around a 9th or 10th seed. Around in that bubble, but they won't make it in. The Washington Wizards have already proven that they're a chaotic mess, and Russ has already been hurt and injured, and that team and direction is not there. So I had the Wizards beginning the season that they would finish with a 7th seed. Who knows what could happen, but they're in utter chaos as of right now.
Playing for personal reasons and dealing with stuff. If he was playing and giving them their 15, 16 a night, then you're like, okay, you got guards, you got wings, you got veteran bigs, but it's just not quite clicking in to say those young players are going to lead them through this stretch is going to be tough. Next year, I think the Cavs make the postseason.
All right, I want to move over to the West. A half a game separates teams 4 through 8, and 2 of last season's playoff teams, the Nuggets and the Mavericks, are currently a game out of 8th. So, Paul, which team in the West is currently most at risk to miss the playoffs?
Memphis.
Well, no doubt about it, the Memphis Grizzlies. I do not expect the Grizzlies to make it in. The Western Conference is stacked as it is, not with tier 1 teams, but with with tier 2 to tier 3 teams. The only tier 1 team in the Western Conference is the LA Lakers. The LA Clippers are a tier 1/tier 2, but I'm going to put the Lakers over because the Clippers folded in the playoffs. I don't really like the makeup of their team too much, and the Lakers just won the championship. So the Lakers are tier 1. With tier 2 are going to be the Clippers in that mix. You can throw in the Suns and Jazz within there as well. But then when you're looking into and then the Nuggets as well. When you're looking into the tier 3s, you're looking at more of the Mavericks, the Blazers, the Warriors, teams along those lines. But within this list, for someone to be bounced out, of course, the Memphis Grizzlies will not make the NBA playoffs. My expectations for the Western Conference that I expect these 8 teams to be in, since I'm looking at the trend from today, in no order: the Lakers, the Clippers, the Jazz, the Nuggets, the Portland Trailblazers, the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, and then the Dallas Mavericks. In no order within so. The Rockets are not going to get in. James Harden has already been bounced and out of there. The Pelicans are at a mess, at a 5-10 record. Expect Stan Van Gundy to possibly get fired or anything in that mix. And they're young as of right now. The Spurs, they're respectable, but no way, no how that they're getting in over the Mavericks or Warriors or Blazers in that mix. That's not happening. And within that, that's basically it. But again, the Lakers, Clippers, Jazz, Nuggets, Blazers, Suns, Warriors, and the Dallas Mavericks.
He'll not make it this year. And you know who else I think is going to fall out? I think the Portland Trailblazers.
Woo!
No.
And that has,
Wow.
because they're dealing with injuries.
You're betting against Dame Lillard.
Well, it's not Dame Lillard. It's his squad. He's.
No, sir. Listen, Nurkic is going to be out for weeks to come. Collins is going to be out, and then CJ McCollum is out. But Damian Lillard, if he can take his team to the playoffs last season after all those injuries, Damian Lillard has that mentality to where his team will be in the playoffs. The Portland Trailblazers will be pretty much around a top 6 to top 8 team in the Western Conference. They'll finish around 6 to 8, knowing with all these injuries coming through. But we could possibly see if Damian Lillard has the mentality as we expect, and he puts up a nightly performance of averaging 30 a game this season by pretty much going for a scoring title. And if he finishes with a top 3 record in the West, he will win MVP of the regular season. If not him or LeBron. But he does have a good storyline to be made. Let's see what happens. Right now, the Portland Trailblazers are sitting at a 9-7 record, 5th in the Western Conference. And they're only 4 games away from first seed. And from third seed, they're around 3 games. So I trust that Damian Lillard, they're going to make the playoffs easy. But for him to get a home court advantage, we'll see.
Losing He's lost CJ McCollum. These guys are going to be going by from 4 to 6 weeks and 72 games. And then not to mention they're going to go at some point go through some protocol issues where they're missing players. And so I can see them easily falling out in Denver and possibly.
Are we doing a play-in again? They're doing a play-in.
So they are doing. I will say this, and that's where the Blazers may be able to do exactly what they did last year, which was make a push right there at the end. If they are whole health-wise toward the end of the season, again, the teams that are in the 9 and 10 spot will have a chance to at least be in the mix for a playing game.
Look, can we talk about the Nuggets, though, for a second?
Yes.
Jokic is having an MVP season,
Yes.
right? He is first-team All-NBA.
MVP consideration season.
MVP consideration. Thanks, Rach. I'm just kidding. He's having that type of season, and they
Is he your MVP right now?
Well, okay, look, to your point, yeah, like you said. But, the fact that they are where they are at, I understand that you want to push, but, guys, they had gone further and further and further every single year, got better every single year, and now you're not even in the postseason.
Right now, the Nuggets are actually at a 4 seed with a 10-7 record. So they've been picking it up. Same thing with Jokic on a triple-double daily basis from time to time. But when it comes to the Nuggets, you got to remember they lost Jeremy Grant, which was a huge piece, which I'm shocked why they didn't bring him back. He's on the Pistons, and Jeremy Grant is averaging 24 a game. He's pretty much leading the league for Most Improved Player of the Year award. They lost Plumlee. They also did lose Torrey Craig and then Troy Daniels. They lost some good pieces on their team, and they did not really fill those positions in. And you are bringing Michael Porter Jr. off the bench. So I don't really like the direction right now with the Nuggets. They're kind of going in somewhat of a circle. But, I mean, they did trend early by making the conference finals last season when no one really expected that to happen. Actually, scratch that. Nobody expected them to make the conference finals last season when you had the Lakers and Clippers out there and the Rockets and yada, yada, yada. But the Nuggets, 4 seed, they're going to continue to be in that trend. And I still expect them to be. I had them finishing around 4th or 5th seed this season. So they're in the right place where I see them to be.
Month in, there's some things there that need to be addressed and need to be changed and need to be tweaked because you shouldn't be here at this point in time, not with that roster, right? You're a year and 2 into your contract and you have all NBA guys, first teamers like Jokic, who I still think is the best big in the league. He's better. I think he's better than Embiid.
Okay.
And so when you have all of that, there's no excuse for that. Their defense isn't great. I think you have young players trying to make jumps still. I think Jamal Murray, I think Porter's trying to make jumps. And so, there's a lot of, like ones, there's just a lot of stuff going on, but they should not be where they are right now.
I really think Kevin not having Porter Jr. is really hurting this team. He
Michael Porter Jr.
Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
He gives them athleticism and size, a stretch four. The guy who's slowly turning into a star in this league that we saw in the playoffs, and I really think it's hurt them early.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to end it off there. Few teams in the East and West that have been on the downtrend. Let's see how the NBA progresses. As the season continues to go on, these young teams like the Knicks out here, the Cavaliers, let's see if they can continue the trend or if they're going to be pretty much fatigued going deeper into the season. And when it comes later into the season when you're fighting for a playoff position, that's when these teams that are playoff contenders usually catch up in the mix and within that race. Because it's a marathon, basically. But we'll end it off there. We'll see a little more coverage of NBA injuries, trades, and directions of NBA teams, and we can see more of a better lighting of when the standings are pretty much spread out with the games played. So we can see more of the Lakers have a 5-game lead over like the Clippers or anything along the lines. Still early. These close teams have pretty much close rankings and different NBA records and standings. They're pretty much kind of the same right now, but within another 15 games or so, we'll see more of a spread, and we'll pretty much see the better NBA landscape. I'm out.